I would like to invite you to join me on a journey to a terrible and dark place. Let's go back in time for a moment, and back to the time when restaurants' fates were decided by just 2 or 3 newspaper critics in your town. Back to a time when you wouldn't know what guests were saying at every moment about your restaurant to all their friends on Twitter. Back to a time when people had to do awful, inhumane things to learn about other cuisines, like read a book. Horrible, I know. I actually want to go back there, but we can't, because, like it or not, all of these technologies are here to stay, and they have been changing the way certainly our society has worked. They've been changing the way media works. They're changing our culture, and of course that means they're going to change the way, and they have been and will continue to change the way that restaurants and chefs work. It changes the way restaurants and chefs think about their food. It changes the way they create food. It changes the way they collaborate with one another, and it changes the way that they can communicate with their customers or their potential customers. And so this morning we have a really interesting panel with lots of different perspectives on how information technology works for chefs, in some cases works the chefs themselves, but a sense of what these technologies are and can do for you. We also have joining us from London 2 chefs, Atul Kochhar and Jason Atherton. Can we say hello to them for a quick second? I don't mean like we. Well, hi, chefs.
Hi.
Oh, wait, they're here. No, where are they? Oh, hey. No, wait. Okay, no, this is very awkward, right? Because they're there, but I have to say hi to them like they're there. So, Mr. Cameraman, you are now 2 of London's most revered chefs. Hi.
Hi, guys.
Chef Atul is on the right, Chef Jason is on the left, and we will talk with them a little bit later, but I just wanted to introduce them so they don't appear like apparitions when you thought the session was over and it was time to go eat more food. But first, I'd like to introduce someone who is here with us in the flesh. Jared Rivera is a young public relations superstar with over 250 culinary clients. But he comes to the industry with a deep passion and a deep understanding of it. He's a partner in several restaurants himself, and his family has a vineyard here in Napa Valley. Most importantly for today, though, he is the co-founder of Chef's Feed, which, fun fact, is actually one of the first apps I downloaded on my phone several years ago. It's a Webby award-winning app that's kind of like the anti-Yelp, but I'm sure he will describe it much more diplomatically than that. And we will let him do that. Mr. Jared Rivera.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's give it up for Francis one more time. This guy's a great dude. So you guys, thank you all for coming in today. It's exciting to be here. It's really awesome to look around the room and see so many different faces from so many different countries, and know that we're all here today for one common thing, which is our crazy and obsessive desire to learn every single thing about every single ingredient of food. So welcome, everybody. I also want to give a special shout out to my mom, who I know is on the live webcast somewhere out there. So hi, Mom. And hats off to the CIA for really putting together this awesome event and recruiting so much top talent. Ann McBride and her team have been phenomenal. So thank you to the CIA. I want to give some love there too. So as Francis said, I am the co-founder of the Chef's Feed app, which is the 2012 Apple Award winner for the best app. So to put that in perspective, in our world, that's like getting 4 Michelin stars. It's very difficult to do. We were selected as 1 out of over 1 million apps out there in the marketplace. So in doing so, we have amassed quite a bit of traffic, and we've compiled quite a bit of data, which I'm going to share with you guys today. The reason why I am here is not because I'm one of these phenomenal chefs in the audience, but because I have been deemed credible to talk about apps. We're going to explore how apps are enabling chefs to, dare I say, displace traditional restaurant critics, as well as other people that have been increasingly driving diners' decisions on where to dine. But first, I want to get us all started with a cartoon, because we all love to watch cartoons. So can we cue the video, please?
This week on Nature Planet, we're here to experience the exciting and complicated ecosystem of the new restaurant. Foodies, bloggers, and food critics alike are here to rate, review, and slag this fledgling establishment, and we're here to see them in their native habitat. Come on! Looks like an early dinner rush, which bodes well for the future success of the new restaurant. Look here!
A Michelin reviewer is a French breed who makes radial tires during the day, and at night reviews the world's finest restaurants, bestowing 1, 2, and sometimes even 3 stars upon eateries that passes high standards for both cuisine and snow tires. Look closely now, for you may not see him again here for 3 to 4 years. And over there, a flock of Grouponers on a Friday night. Look as they argue with the waiter about being able to use multiple Groupons on one check. No doubt they will forget to leave gratuity on the full value of the meal.
It's already 8:03. Our reservation was at 8 o'clock.
This is what we hope to find. A small pack of feisty Yelpers.
Is it me or does the server keep looking at my hat?
Is this the music from the Social Network?
I eat at many restaurants, but this one is tops. The truffled mac and cheese is to die for. 5 stars.
Aren't you the manager of this place?
That's no good. Over there by the two-top, it's an overzealous urban spooner, shaking away. Oh, and next to him,
this place is better seen than tasted.
the anonymous Zagat reviewer. She still got it. A very odd setting indeed. It is a pack of chefs, but this is not their restaurant. Perhaps they're here to simply eat the food instead of prepare it. The other species have clearly taken notice. They probably want to know what a real chef thinks of the new restaurant.
Unfortunately, we may never know. If only they were an app for that.
Ooh, I'll have what they're having.
So, thanks for watching that. Thank you. So that little satire video really sums up what the premise of Chef's Feed is. We've recruited nearly 1,000 chefs, the nation's best chefs, and through our app, they're sharing not only where, but also what they like to eat when they leave their own restaurants. This idea is really a no-brainer. It's the best way of finding food. As the saying goes, if you want to find good food, you should ask a local, but if you want to find great food, you should ask a local chef. So we built a technology to allow chefs to add dishes that they find interesting, and then in turn, we've been tracking to see how the customers, our users, have been gravitating towards those dishes, and it's actually quite fascinating. So we introduced this concept of expert reviews, really smack dab in the height of when user-generated review sites were exploding. Everybody and their mother started to fancy themselves a critic, but very few of them actually had any solid food expertise. Our platform has allowed chefs to not only share their favorite dishes with our users, but they're also able to talk about things that happened within the own 4 walls of their restaurant. Our users, when you set up a profile, just like you can on Instagram or Twitter, rather, you can follow chefs, and these chefs have thus become our editors, contributing food content to our app. To give you an idea of the consumer demand for the chef content that we have in our app, I'm going to share some data with you from behind the curtains of Chef's Feed. We're able to track all their user data, so we don't know specifically who's doing what, but we know you by an IP address, and we know where your thumbs are going on the phone. So in less than 1 year since we launched the previous version of our app, we've actually created over 7 million chef-to-user connections within the app. Our app is one of the fastest growing circulations of any publications out there. And we've achieved this growth because of the consumer's desire to receive content directly delivered from you chefs out there. And that's really the point that I want to get across today, is how influential and how powerful you guys are. 7 million connections in less than a year. We have a button in the app for those of you that are not familiar with it. Please download it. But there's a button in the app that will allow you to plan a dish. So let's say you're sifting through all the content, you see something you like, you can plan it, it'll go to your itinerary. When a chef recommends a dish, we had Mario Batali the other day. He said that he likes the hamburger from the Spotted Pig. And in one day, 5,000 people indicated that they were going to go eat that dish. They plan to eat that dish. So we're really showing how these chefs are becoming more and more influential and displacing what we expect to see ordinarily from the Michelin Guide or your Pete Wells, Michael Bauer, et cetera, et cetera. And through our app, users are discovering and eating hundreds and thousands of dishes. And meanwhile, the big news for us here in San Francisco this week was the announcement that the Chronicle is folding their 86ing their food section, which is an iconic move. I mean, this is, you know, a huge Bible for anybody in the food world out here, and then, you know, they're disappearing. So clearly, you see that there's a big switch and shift in media. The lesson here is that the times, they are changing. Media is evolving rapidly, and your diners or future diners are more interested than ever in receiving information directly from your chefs, not from the local newspaper or even the National Food Guide. Our data backs this up. Your guests want to know everything. They want to know where you got your produce from. They want to see the sauce being made. They want to see the way you compost. They want to be enrolled in the entire process from ideation to creation to elimination. They want to see it all, the composting. And you need to adapt these technologies in order to establish those direct relationships with your potential diners. And it's a hell of a lot cheaper than PR, because I used to own a PR firm, and using these social tools that are out there are free. They require some of your time, but they're very important that you adopt them. What else? So I know that there's a lot of stuff to digest here, but I'd be curious to know who out there is, who uses an iPhone in the audience. Which ones are iPhone users? Okay. Android, who's got an Android? Okay. BlackBerry, anyone got BlackBerry? Other, is there another? Oh, hey. Hello, our one BlackBerry user. So the good news is everyone's got a smartphone, more or less, which means you guys are halfway there in terms of creating these distribution channels. And the purpose of my talk really is not to tell you how to use these things. I don't have time for that today, but rather that you should be using them, because your new wave of diners are going to expect it, and they're genuinely very interested in hearing from you. Our data proves this, and you should all be capitalizing on this opportunity. If anyone is interested in hearing more about this or becoming a contributing editor for Chef's Feed, you guys can send me an email. It's just my first name is jared@chefsfeed.com. And I appreciate you all giving me some of your time today. I hope that you'll start to understand what your role and responsibility as a chef is, continue to expand outside the restaurant. And the general public is regarding you as an authoritative figure when it comes to any matters on food. So use technology and apps to further perpetuate this momentum. It's very important. And thanks for everything. I'm going to hand it over to Francis again, and my friend Nick's going to get up here soon and talk about some cool ebooks and gadgets. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jared. Next, we have the swooningly handsome Nick Fauchald. He is a man of media old and new. He actually began his career as a magazine editor. God bless them. They are suddenly going extinct, but you know, we should hold them in our hearts. He launched Every Day with Rachel Ray back in 2006, and later went on to Wine Spectator and was later a senior editor at Food and Wine. But then in 2008, he launched the web and email-based Tasting Table as editor-in-chief. Now he is the founder and owner of the aptly named All Day Media, which works both in digital and print publishing. And it's not driven by the trend of digital publishing and the idea that like, oh, everything's just going to go on the web or everything's going to show up in your inbox. But it's really predicated on the idea that, no, every platform, every medium has its virtues, has its value. And what Nick does is try to search out what are the best times and reasons to use each of these. So I will give you Nick Fauchald.
Thanks, Francis. Hey, everybody. As Francis mentioned, I started off in print journalism and spent a good 10 years doing that before I moved over to the digital side. And now most of my work is trying to bridge the two together. I work with print companies to create digital products. I work with digital companies to produce things that get printed on paper, and trying to sift through and figure out, which technologies are worth someone's time and money and which ones are not, and when it's best to go completely the old-fashioned route. So today, this overarching theme of our seminar is, I guess we should call it as if cooking weren't enough. As chefs, you're now expected to interact with each other, to interact with your diners, to interact with the community at large. And there's just countless ways to do this now. And so what I'm trying to do here is to quickly run through some of your options and with the focus on tools that you can use yourselves, that you don't need to pay lots of money to have someone else do for you. Things that you can embrace and produce yourself so that you become your own content creators or your own publishers, however you want to look at it, your own spin doctors. So let's get going. So in addition to cooking delicious food and running restaurants, you are now expected to be your own brand managers, your own spin doctors, PR agents, whatever you want to call them, your publishers. And lastly, in order to pay for all of this, you now can be your own fundraisers. So going, the old way of doing this was to sit in your kitchen and wait for all of these things to come to you. You waited for a cookbook publisher to give you a deal. You waited for the press to show up at your restaurant and write about you. You waited for investors to come and ask you to open a new restaurant. And then if you had the aspiration, you waited for the Food Network to call and ask you to star in your own TV show. Now you don't have to do that. You can go and start on all these things yourself. Starting with social media, Francis is much more of an expert with Twitter than I am. I think I counted yesterday 9 tweets in the last, 10 years or however long Twitter's been around. But I do love Instagram, and I think especially with food and with chefs and restaurants, Instagram has a huge advantage over Twitter in that it's an aesthetic thing. And the chefs that use it well are the ones who can excite their followers and inspire them with photos of food, and also the ones who can be personable and let their readers, let their diners peek behind the curtain of their restaurant or of their lives, and so that you develop this personal connection with the chef over social media, and then you want to go to their restaurant and get to know them more and their food better and more intimately. With any of these technologies I'm talking about, there's going to be pitfalls and negatives. The ones I think with Twitter and with Instagram are definitely what I call the peacocking effect. Look how awesome my life as a chef is. Aren't you guys all jealous? Look who I'm hanging out with. You see a lot of chefs' social media feeds just consumed by pictures with them of Anthony Bourdain, which is great, but I don't think it's the best way to connect, with diners. And the other thing is just aesthetics. If you're a terrible food photographer, no one's going to want to come to your restaurant. So I think it's worth the extra bit of effort to take pretty photos and to think about what messages you want and what kind of interaction you want with your audience. I think the worst thing you can do is to hand off your Twitter feed to a 23-year-old intern and have them ghost tweet for you, because it's completely obvious, and I don't like following or reading chefs who are clearly just blasting out marketing material every day. But as you can see here, some of the chefs have gigantic followings. Thomas Keller, 300 and some thousand, and have the ability to reach and broadcast messages very, very quickly through these channels. I think that all of this is pretty obvious to us, so we'll move on. Cookbooks. It's fitting that our keynote speaker yesterday, Nathan Mervold, is also a cookbook self-publisher, and the creation of the modernist cuisine, I think, is a very important step in self-publishing. It showed us that you can create a beautiful product, that product can be successful, that it can have distribution without relying on a traditional publisher. Cookbook publishing is still a very strong market, but it ain't what it used to be. There's less money going around. Advances are not as high as they used to be in the past. Publishers are not producing as many books, and they're always focusing on new things. So one thing a chef can do is take the reins and make your own cookbook, physical, old-fashioned cookbook. Another good example of this where a chef created their own book but then relied on a publisher to package it, to print it, and to distribute it was the Alinea cookbook. That one, Grant and his team really built the book from the ground up, from conception through photography and design, and then handed it off to 10-Speed Press, who produced the book and who distributed it and help them market it. And I think that was a very successful project for them. A couple other examples you see here. Tamara Murphy in Seattle produced her own cookbook last year. It's really beautiful, really well made. Alfred Patale in New York just released his first self-published book. He had been publishing books with various publishers for years and decided to go off on his own. The advantage is instead of just receiving an advance and then your publisher reaps all the rewards of sales, you retain everything if you're producing your own book. The challenge, though, however, is distribution, and I'll touch on that in just a sec. Magazines are another old-fashioned medium that chefs and restaurants are getting involved in. Lucky Peach is probably the most famous example of that with Dave Chang. Restaurant Group in Brooklyn has been producing Diner Journal for, I think, 5 years now, and it's a beautiful little magazine. Alfred Patale also is producing a magazine that he distributes through his restaurant in addition to his own cookbook. And then on the bottom right there is a beautiful little series of food journals that the chef Linton Hopkins is making down in Atlanta. It's something that's really not been publicized, and it's kind of very under the radar, but if you show up to one of his restaurants, you might be able to get a copy of one of these beautiful little books. Much easier and much cheaper than printing and paying a printer to produce a fancy cookbook for you is taking all this content and digitizing it and producing an ebook. There are so many tools now that will allow you to produce an ebook for as much money as you want to spend. You can spend $0, or you can spend a lot more on production and photography and videos. But the possibilities are endless, and I wish I had better examples of chefs embracing ebook technology to produce their own stuff, and I don't have them yet. I'm working with a bunch of authors who work for traditional publishers and write cookbooks, and whose rights have reverted back to them after 10 years, after 15 years, and we're able to take all of their content and repackage it and give it a second shelf life in digital format. But if you're curious about ebook publishing, I would look into the free tools out there like Apple's iBooks Author and so on that will let you produce a really, really beautiful book. You see a couple examples here. Next, another Grand Rapids venture. They were producing ebooks. They still might be for each of their iterations of that restaurant. So it lets you preview and learn a little bit about the inspiration behind every iteration of Next. Laurent Gras produced one last year that's very beautiful. On the flip side of this, if you do produce an ebook, yet you want it to have a print counterpart, there's interesting new technology called the espresso machine that will let you print on demand or let people buy your book and then print it on demand. We're just getting our feet wet with this technology, and the quality is still pretty low, but every time I see an espresso printed book, they're getting better and better. And soon I think they'll be ready to produce really beautiful cookbooks that can stand up to books that you see on the shelf at the bookstore. I believe that the bookstore of the future is going to have shelves of books and then one of these big machines that you can go and choose from a catalog of things, and in 10 minutes you have a beautiful book in your hands. Cross-platform is really mixing new and old. And here I have an example of something that I produced for a chef in New York last year, a guy named Lior Sarkaz, who owns a spice company called Le Boite. Some of you might be his clients. He wanted to produce a book, originally just wanted to produce an ebook that he could give to customers that would show them how to take these really esoteric and unique spice blends that he creates and cook with them in their kitchens. They needed recipes. We looked into it, and actually Mirvold and his team were a huge help here, because I was able to track down their publisher, their printer in China, and use the same printer to produce a very, very nice book at a very low price. So we ended up making both an ebook, physical cookbook, and we made multiple kinds of ebooks. We made ebooks specifically for Apple, for the iPad, and we made ones that were that would work on Kindle devices and things that were a little less pretty but more responsive and versatile. Another great example of this, and I urge you all to check out either or of these products, is John Sundstrom, another Seattle chef, produced an ebook and an app and a physical cookbook last year for his restaurant Lark. Each one of them is a really, really high quality product, and I will show you in a second how he made this happen. Let's skip ahead from apps for a second, because I think Jared did a great job covering those. Kickstarter, funding, all of these things that you might want to make will cost some amount of money, and crowdfunding is a recent phenomenon, and it will allow you to raise the money to produce these things. A lot of folks in the restaurant community have already been using Kickstarter and its similar sites to raise monies to produce or to launch new restaurants, to buy new chairs and silverware, to produce cookbooks and ebooks and apps. There are now, at last count, I don't know, hundreds of crowdfunding sites. Kickstarter still is at the very top of the heap because of its reach, its massive reach, and the quality of the products that are being funded on there. A couple of downsides, to any of this is you might not reach your goal and you have to walk home in shame. Especially with Kickstarter, if you don't hit your goal, you don't get a penny. A lot of the other crowdfunding sites, you get to keep out all your money, no matter how much you raise. But just a couple examples here. There's a restaurant in Brooklyn that raised $15,000 to help launch itself. It's a very successful restaurant since. A long-standing restaurant in Brooklyn, also called Egg, raised $10,000 to basically do renovations, and a couple examples of chefs, and one example of a medical marijuana restaurant that raised $0. How do I go back? Let's jump into apps real quick. Speaking of money, apps are very expensive to make, and I really wouldn't recommend anyone getting into it until they know the economies of app making. You can spend tens of thousands of dollars or more to produce an app, and you might make hundreds of dollars in the end. The cost of building an app is still very high, and the market for selling an app is still very low. You might, consumers, any of you with a smartphone, are probably used to paying $0 or $1 or $2 at the most for an app. And in order to make money back on a $50,000 investment, that's a ton of people that you need to download your app. There are some ways, though, to produce these things without spending too much money. One example here is an app I produced for Chef Sarah Jenkins, where a bunch of us, a photographer, a videographer, Sarah, myself, developer, we all put in our time and energy and work, and are sharing the profits of that app on an ongoing basis. So we've actually all made a little bit of money from it, and Sarah has this beautiful app that she can now use as a marketing platform. I'm going to wrap it up here in just a second, but hopefully when we get into our little panel and Google Hangout discussion, if anyone has questions on any of these technologies, specifically myself or one of us can dig in a little deeper. Thanks, everyone, for your time.